You've probably heard the saying that your network is your net worth. It's a popular saying because, well, it's true. Building genuine relationships in business is your capital, your social capital. It's the goodwill and trust you've developed with people over the years, and it works much like putting money in a bank. Every time you help someone, you deposit some social capital and vice versa. The law of reciprocity kicks in. But in a world where much of our time is spent isolated in front of a computer screen, building genuine relationships can be a bit difficult, and networking online on social platforms like LinkedIn or Facebook, that can be a bit tough. It can seem like you're just a number in the ongoing pursuit of leads, inauthentic and frankly, salesy. There's an art to building genuine relationships. And in today's episode, my guest offers suggestions on how to develop a strong network, increase your social capital, and thereby increase your financial capital. The episode starts now. Welcome to Shift or Get Off the Pot, the podcast that helps you get out of your head and into action so you can make your dreams your reality. Let's get to it. My guest today is here to help you build your net worth, because if you are in business, you probably know then your network is directly related to your net worth. And she knows quite a bit about building your network. In fact, it's not just building your network. As she says, she helps people flip the script on building a network. She actually has a company, or she's the creator of Networking 3.0, and she shows people how to grow their social and their financial net worth by applying learning strategies and mindset shifts. Always important. She's also the author of an upcoming book, Redefining Networking, The Power of Net Offering. Oh, I love that. Net offering. Very good. Nice little play on words there too. Mm-hmm. She really helps people to redefine how people connect, and especially in today's digital world where building those relationships, those authentic relationships, are incredibly important, not just professionally, but personally as well. So I'm so excited to have you here to talk about really understanding how to build your network and just how important that is, especially in a world where it is so driven by the internet, by social media. And I think sometimes we get so tripped up in that, we don't realize just how important that interconnectedness is for all of us. So welcome, Renee Hensley.
Thank you, Kim. I'm so happy to be here and share a little bit about net offering. Absolutely.
I mean, as I said, I love that title because I just think that it really is offering. Mm-hmm. It's providing a service or providing a value, and not just thinking networking, got to go to this, got to go to that, which I think sometimes networking can get a bad rap because I think a lot of times it's more about, oh, I have to go to this meeting, we're going to this mixer or whatever, and it's a good networking event, but people tend to go in there with this mindset like, I've got to get more leads. I got to build my prospecting funnel rather than showing up to build those relationships.
Right. So true. Absolutely.
That's why I think I like that offering, because it really does come back down to being of service and providing a value, doesn't it?
Yep, absolutely. That was really the key to everything, because my daughter, she graduated from college about a year ago, and she said, "Mom, you're such a networker," and she just said, "You're always giving help." And really, it all stems from the fact that I am about service. I'm about helping others. I use that word. It's not a 4-letter dirty word. It's, how can I help you, Kim? Is there something I can do for you? So it's really a service kind of servant mindset.
Well, and I think we've lost that a little bit in today's society. I do. I mean, I remember years ago in sales, because I started my career in sales, my adult career in sales. And we did go to a lot of events
Mhm.
because that was building those relationships. And I can remember, though, going to many of those where initially it was like, oh, when you're just starting out, you're like, oh, I have to go here because I have to prospect type of thing. But
Mhm.
then the more that you start showing up, you start feeling much more comfortable. They become your
Mhm.
friends, really.
Right.
And it starts to change, which is why, like you say, flip the script on it, because it does
Mhm.
change and it doesn't feel like it's a business meeting so much
Right.
more as I want to go out and hang out with my friends.
Right. Right.
And it's building those
Absolutely.
relationships.
It is. And authentic relationships. This Generation Z, who I'm very targeted into, obviously, I mentioned my daughter, and I love her friends, and I love the purity and the wholesomeness of them. But to your earlier point, the whole digital component. And in the corporate environment, I've seen them. They're delightful via the texting, but when you get in person, they kind of shut down. And I knew I wanted to make a real effort with her and her friends. And so I said, you guys are making networking too hard. It's about being authentic, it's about knowing your strengths. And then when you show up, that will come through, wherever you go, whatever association, sorority, fraternity, all those different things. That's really how she got started. And I said, acts of service are really going to get you farther than trying to be so interesting. Be more interested in people and ask lots of questions. People love to talk about themselves and what they're doing. I mean, you don't want to be overly, but there's a good amount of people wanting to share what they've done and where they've been and how they got there. So you can get that really naturally.
I love that you say be interested and
Mhm.
not so concerned with being interesting, because I
Mhm.
think that is really crucial. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of people don't understand that. It's almost like, oh my gosh, you have to get your elevator pitch down. You remember the
Mhm.
old, oh, get your elevator. What are you saying?
Right.
Concise. What's your like quick sentence,
Mhm.
and now you see all the time, I'm so and so and I help blah 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 blah. And it's
Right.
kind of like, oh, please, I've heard that so many times. I hate to
Right.
say that because
Right.
I understand the necessity of it.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I think something's missing in there, because I understand, okay, I help, but it's one thing to just write that out or say it. It's another thing when it comes across, like you're talking about, authentically.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
it's not just this little concise statement, is it?
Right. Right. Very true.
It's getting curious. It's
Mhm.
getting curious and asking questions.
It is. It's so basic in so many ways.
Yeah. I remember somebody that is actually in a mastermind group of mine, and he was on the show, and he had said he never asks people what they do.
Mhm.
He always, and I can't remember exactly what he asked them, but he always asks them something like, what, something simple, like, what's your favorite food, or what do you like to cook, or,
Mhm.
what are your favorite hobbies? Just something else,
Mhm.
because it's a great way to get them to talk
Right.
without, like you said, people like to talk about themselves,
Mhm.
but without having it to be so confined
Right.
to just what it is that they do for work or what they
Mhm.
do for a living. Because sometimes that doesn't light a lot of people up.
It's
Sometimes it
true.
does, but
Right.
sometimes it doesn't.
Right. There's almost two directions you have to go, and it's being able to question, not be a know-it-all, but be able to ask questions that are of interest, like you mentioned. And then there's also there's the other part, if you think of a balanced life, there's the ability to, go and do things to be interesting. It's not that you have to convince someone that you're interesting, but when you kind of put those in your career backpack as to, all the cool things you've done, you have that available to share that is beyond work. Like you mentioned, that you don't have to, if you're an accountant, that doesn't mean that is all that defines you. You may be a rock climber and traveled to amazing places and things like that. And I think, it's kind of having those two forks, ask good questions and then be on a trek, your bucket list, your lifetime bucket list, have those that you're working towards to be interesting.
Well, and it's building the relationships based on someone that you enjoy being around, right? It goes back to the whole know, like, and trust deal.
Right.
And it is true though, because people are, listen, as human beings, we're well rounded. We are not just one dimensional. So
Right.
it's finding something maybe of common ground as well. So when you work with people, how do you approach this? Do you basically kind of say, okay, this is like a cheat sheet for going in and networking? How is it that you kind of help them to understand how they should approach maybe a networking event, or how they should start looking at how can I start building a good, strong, solid network around me?
Right. Well, to me, net offering bumps nicely into a couple things. And one's going to really resonate with you, which is mindset. You've got to have the right mindset. And there's a lot of different ways to get there, but it's action that really is the crux of that. And then I'm all about the conversation starters. To me, that is, like, I guess you would say, the meat and potatoes of what I'm talking about is mindset and my approach. So the conversation starters are key. Also, I think something that's really important, especially with Generation Z, all the generations, honestly, but I've been focused in on Generation Z, and that is really looking at what your strengths are. I don't think our educational system is very good when it comes to, trying to figure out what people's strengths are. So when I was a junior in high school, I had the opportunity to be a foreign exchange student to Germany. And so I was in the gymnasium, is what it's called. And by the age of 16 or so, you pretty much know which way you're going in your career. And they've done career assessments, strength building, determination, all kinds of really great things. And I think that we could do a lot more of that. I think some educational areas are better than others, but I don't think there's a lot of strength emphasis. And I can say that from the corporate environment. I feel we receive the people that graduate from college and universities, high schools, and so they are almost shocked when we do such a focus on their strengths, because that helps build collaboration. And then they realize they don't have to be all things to all people, because they can leverage their strengths.
That's a great point, because you're right that I think a lot of times it's not until you're in the corporate world where you start doing some of those personality assessments. You start to take a look at what are your strengths, where would you be best suited. A great HR department will help with that, or a leadership team will help with that. But it's interesting that we don't really do that. I mean, here in the States, there's not as much emphasis put on that at a younger age, let's say, in those formative years before going into college, because really it's just, okay, let's get the basics down. But then let's face it, even when you go into college, those first 2 years, you're not trying to figure out what you want to do. You're covering still, which I just really have a hard time with, but you're covering still those basics. It's like, I've already learned this. Now I have to do it again. And I'm like, why are we doing this? But unless you're going to a trade school, right, where you already have some people naturally do. This goes all back to purpose. This is why you brought up mindset. It all goes back to purpose, understanding who you are, what you want in life. But oftentimes maybe we have an idea of what we want, but then it's, we bury it, right? Bury. We go out and then we go like, okay, you can earn money here. So then we start making some money. And then it's like, all right, here we go. But then you find yourself in a position, but it's not until later in life in corporate. And if we could turn that around, we could do what you say, flip the script and change that. So we introduce something like that at an earlier age. It really would, I think, help quite a few people, so that they're not bouncing around. And people that I see much later in life that are like, I have no idea why I'm here.
Right. Very true. Absolutely. And that's spot on. I just really want to bring this to a younger generation. And there's so many, you can get the gamut for the strength assessments. There's free ones, there's high dollar ones. But I think also what I'm seeing is people really want a sense of belonging, with the whole DEIB. And I feel it's not just me, but, if you had the three circles, DEI, and then in the middle is really that belonging part. And I think we can get to that place much faster if people understand their strengths, respect others' strengths, and then collaboration is a no-brainer, because I remember in my early 20s and 30s, I thought I had to be a know-it-all and know everything and know everybody. And I really grew up when I realized, no, I can leverage other people's strengths and we can collaborate, and our end result, our end product is going to be so much better because of that collaboration. And so I'm not really, when I flip the script on networking, I am really trying to get people up to speed quicker. All the networking gurus out there, their stuff and their information and their motivation, all is still relevant. I just want to get people between 18 and 30 is my target audience right now. And I just want to get them the right mindset, the right approach. And I don't want them to fear it like I did, like so many of us did.
Well, I also think that at 20, in your 20s, maybe mid 20s, I think not only do we think we need to know it all, but we act like we know it all.
We
right?
do.
It's kind of like, which is just the insecurity. It's just the insecurity. So if we act like we know it all, okay, great. Nobody can tell me because I already know it. So, that's the whole thing of, as you get start being open to coaching and listening to other people as well. But for our listeners, I want to go back to the DEIB. If you want to just break that down and explain what that is.
Sure. DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and then belonging. And so there's a large focus within the corporate arena, to increase diversity, through hiring and reduction of turnover and hiring diverse people. And I think that's within anything, whether it's hiring, whether it's associations that you belong to, that you have a good mix of people so that you get mixed backgrounds and understanding and experiences, and then equity and inclusion, that people all have that opportunity to get access to things that others maybe haven't. And I think that's a key too. When you have this is my belief. I don't know what your thoughts are, Kim, but I just feel like if you focus on belonging, the D, the E, and the I will take care of itself. That's me. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
No, I would agree with you. And as you were talking about that, I was just kind of thinking back to some things early on in sales training, I would have to say, and even personal development. And it comes down to that, because when you focus on the belonging, from a perspective of how am I showing up, again, in service to others, what can I do to help other people? You start to build that sense of belonging naturally, because all of a sudden you kind of land among the people that you feel comfortable with, and vice versa. And it becomes more of a give and take relationship, what you're talking about, everything else starts to fall into place, rather than what I think happens frequently, especially in such a digital world, or maybe not just a digital world, especially in such a social media driven world, it's take.
Right.
Rather than give, or it's leading with the taking rather than the giving, which is just, we've all been there. We've all felt that. And it's an energy suck.
Right. I love that.
I mean, it is,
completely is. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then nobody wants to be around that. So it's kind of like, we all have those stories of people where we go somewhere and you're like, oh, duck, or I'm going to turn this way. They don't see me. Right?
I love that. And around those people, those conversations are, well, enough about me. What do you think about me?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's like, can we stop talking about you now and do me? And you're like, no, wait, what?
Yes. I say that all the time in my head.
You've been saying that for so long. All I've done is listen to you. Yeah, I know. Yep. Or the other thing too is it's either all about them or it's complaints. And again, it's kind of like, let's just let that go. But I agree with you that I think that when you start focusing more on the sense of belonging, not in a needy way, let's be really clear on that. It's not coming from a needy way. It's more of a sense of belonging because there is a common ground, because there are common interests and maybe some common values as well.
Right.
And that makes the difference, right?
Yep. What you said earlier too, it resonates with me. I'm a big advocate of you can't hold the banners of victor and victim at the same time.
Right.
So it falls into that as well. And I think being around people and having that sense of belonging helps you become that victor mentality, instead of a victim mentality. And that's what I'm hoping Net Offering brings to people. My networking 3.0 is really net offering and net new learning and then social net worth. And I think if you address those three and you're always moving in the direction to really kind of check the boxes, you're really going to be on that stair step that you were alluding to earlier in our conversation that can get you where you want to go, whether it's within your own personal relationships, your business relationships, school, how to contact and connect. That's more important, like with your professors. One of the things I saw with my daughter, I said, when she first got into nursing school and she was surrounded by all these very prestigious people, and I said, just connect with them, share, ask questions, don't be afraid of them. And they're some of her best mentors to this day. She'll go and drive wherever they live to just connect with them and share a dinner with them. And there's nothing she's trying to gain in that moment, but my gosh, they've helped her in countless ways. But she was just there available. She took feedback well. She's really one of those. She inspires me. I can say that our Generation Z, when they're very driven and they carry that whole victor mentality, they can be very inspiring. I don't know. You have children. Do you find that too?
Yeah, I do. I have 4 children, and I do. And I also think that because my children were either athletes or my daughter was a performer. And I think just doing that, you're in a team environment,
right?
You naturally, that starts to build kind of that, not only confidence, but it builds the ability to connect a little bit easier because you're asking questions, you're working together as a team, you all have a common interest.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of it. And it's like with your daughter with the nursing school, they're in the same industry. They have a common interest in what they're doing. So it makes it a little bit easier. I think in a corporate environment, I think sometimes we see that depending on the levels, of where people are. Certainly the sales department bonds maybe a little bit better together, right? And then the marketing, you see these different areas and how they do that. But that's why I think team building is so important in companies too. Team building in companies and helping people to, move ahead and start to, in a sense, I guess it's really relating to each other and having those different departments relate to each other in a way that they can find a common ground.
Right. So true. Janae, I could brag, about kids, but when they motivate you, so she trained for 12 years to be a synchronized swimming Olympian.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Her knee buckled out at age 19. Otherwise, she probably would have been at the 2020 Olympics. But I watched her learn how to fail forward. She failed so much in the early years that made her who she was. And she ended up being 5th in the country, in the United States. And it's synchronized swimming. But it's just the work they had to put in. And so I so relate to what you're sharing about your kids and that team. But I worry for a lot of our young people who didn't have the sports, who didn't have the opportunity there, and, sometimes they're late to the game a little bit and they get out into the world and they don't have those skills, I guess, is what I worry about for them.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think great mentorship programs come in and why they're so important. I mean, and listen, you can probably find a great mentorship program in just about every corner of, especially in the US. I mean, with Boys and Girls Clubs and different organizations, there are mentorship programs available to people that can help with that.
Yep. You just have to seek it out. And I think that's what I hope for people as well, is just don't be afraid to invest in yourself, take the steps to get to that goal. And nothing's impossible if you really set your mind to it, unless you're trying to be an NBA player and maybe you're 4'11". But I mean, generally, anything you want to set your mind to, I'm just a big advocate of trying to go the game.
Go the game. I love that. One of the things my very first mentor told me, my mentor was a man named Zig Ziglar. And he told me, you can get anything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get
So
what they want.
true. So
It
true.
is. And honestly, I've always kind of kept that at the back of my mind, because when I approached anything, truthfully, when I came back from a sales conference that he was leading and had talked with him, and it turned things around, because I was so focused on my quota that I had to meet, that I was like, oh my gosh, what if I don't meet it this month? What if I don't? And then I was like, okay, I have to go to this. I have to go to this. And it was more of that hustle mentality and like, oh, got to do it.
Right.
But when I let that go and I started thinking about, wait, what? Why am I doing this? Why am I selling the ad space? What do I really believe about this? And do I really think it can help people? And I mean, if the answer to that was no, then okay, there was nowhere I could go with that. But my answer was a definitive yes, and I could clearly understand why. I think that's important though, because you have to know that, or you have to believe that what you have to offer is of value. And even if it's something that you're talking about, you're not just standing, and we've all been to networking events, we've all been to industry things where you just sit there and and you're thinking, really? Do I want to talk about lunch right now? You know what I mean? There's like, you have nothing, I don't know. It's just
I'm
kind of
with
like,
you.
okay, let's come up with something else, And that's where the questions come in though, right? Being curious.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think you could be annoying. I've said that earlier, but I don't think you can be inquisitive enough. I got in trouble when I was young. My grandmother was like, Renee, can you just wait till I answer the first question that you asked? But I was like, why is this? What is that? How is that? Why? I was very inquisitive or precocious, but I wanted to know. And I was an only child. And I thought, gosh, these adults are so smart, and I don't want to have to learn the hard way. That was kind of my thing. I don't know if you were did you have to take the hard way to get to things, or did you learn from others easily?
I think in different areas, it was kind of both, to be honest with you. I think for me in sales, because I didn't know what I wanted. I did know. I didn't know early on at like 15, 16, right? And then, as you're starting to think, okay, I got to get ready to get my grades up to go to college, blah, blah, blah. What do I want to do? When I got into college, I knew what I wanted to do. I did, but I shelved it. I put it on the back burner because too many people said, oh, really? How are you going to do anything with that? You need to make money. You're really good at sales. You can make a lot of money in sales. And so I went that route, which was the easier route for me because my dad had been in sales, and he gave me a lot of motivational books. He gave me just some tips that helped me, right? But even when I got into sales early on, there wasn't a lot of training in the particular company that I had gone into. It was kind of like, jump in. You just jump in and go. And so it was like, okay, baptism of fire, you just got to figure it out. But in a sense, that was helpful because it was straight commission. And so it was like, oh, I got to figure this out, if I want to eat. And so I did, so I would say there was like two ways around that,
Right.
Or two ways to answer that rather. And yeah, I think it was, I don't always think, let's face it. I think if you are willing to shut your mouth and open your ears and take advice and listen to people, then it can be a little bit easier. But again, going back to being in your 20s where you're kind of like, I know everything, or it's that insecurity thing. And that can be the thing. That's part of that is just a maturity thing, though, I do think. I think some of it is you just have to, it's growing pains.
Right. And you're not going to skip those. I think that's important to know too. So was your sales background, what was it particularly that you?
Intangible. I was in advertising sales.
Oh,
so magazine advertising sales. So when you're selling ad space in a magazine, you can't really show to somebody, here's this product for you. It's kind of, so getting into intangible sales and then, and obviously into commission sales. But I will tell you that, the first 3 months were like, oh, how am I going to make this work? And then slowly, it's like anything else. You build a book of business, but it really was it was a lot of personal development. This is why after talking with Zig Ziglar, I came back and I started just changing things because I really started to, it was letting go of the quota. because I was so focused on that, which listen, as a personal development coach, high performance coach, I do believe that that's important. You have to have something that's pulling you forward. But at the same time, your whole focus can't be on that. You have to understand, why am I doing? What's the why? And what do I really believe about this, right? Because then that takes away exactly what you're talking about. It takes away when you are going prospecting, if you're going to a networking event, whatever it may be, even if you're on LinkedIn, that energy doesn't come across.
Right.
It's a different energy. And it really does come back to, it is a different energy that we exude, and we all are always putting energy. And just like I said earlier, when someone's coming in the room and you're like, save me. you feel it, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing. And it just completely changed because I was so connected to what this was going to do for my clients and how it was going to help them. And I really did see the value in that. I knew it. And I could see it from the magazine itself and how it had helped others and the results it was getting for them. And so because I so fully believed it, I mean, I became the top salesperson in 2 months after that.
I could so see that. I love that though.
It was, but it is an energy thing, and it is a mindset. It was a mindset shift because it was letting go. It was letting go of something that I had been just driven to achieve because I was so concerned of making the numbers and not getting cut, And when you do that, you put the focus on the wrong thing. You're not putting the focus on the people.
Yep. Absolutely. I totally agree. Well, it makes me think back to my real estate days. So how it all took off for me too was I got my broker salesperson license at age 19, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just know I went to be a business person making lots of money. But I had sage advice, sage people around me, and they just, they said, you need to get out, you need to talk to people, you need to increase your knowledge, you need to build up, your relationship skills. I think that was the biggest thing that saved me, is a lot of grace from them, 'cause these were seasoned vets, in the real estate business. And I just learned so much from them. They were helpful. Like I said, they had sage advice to share. I asked tons of questions. I know I probably was annoying at 19, but when you have people there who've been there and done it, and interest rates were like 14%. And nobody was buying homes then. So I think about how far I've come, but honestly, I just never wanted to be that smarmy. What's the right word, Kim? Is it swarmy?
Well,
smarmy. The networker who glides through the room and, knows everybody.
The sleazy?
I love it. That's really true. I just never wanted to be that person. And I just found, that it was much easier to be interested in others, helping others, collaborating. And I think it's brought me a lot of success. I've never felt like I had to pull out, who do I know? What do they know? But having those connections has been really, really powerful.
Yeah. I agree with you in that the connections can be very powerful and helpful, but you just mentioned something. You never felt like you had to pull out all those, connections and such. It's because, again, when you have a strong network and you have an authentic network where you want to help each other, it becomes a win-win for everybody. It's not feeling like, again, it's a take. It becomes a give and take. And I think that's what's so important here, is understanding that it has to be a give and take.
Absolutely. You remind me, I have lived, my daughter said, oh, that's kind of old fashioned, mother. But I said, I live by the WIFM. What's in it for me? And I live by that for others. What's in it for them? And I always talk about radio station WIIFM. Have you dialed into their channel? And, are they picking up your frequency? Are you picking up their frequency? But it's so true about creating that win-win. And I think that's what I also think when I think about net offering, flipping it, and I don't feel like what I'm promoting is like earth shattering, but I do think that the focus, the mindset shift that I love that you are all about, getting that, and then when I say conversation starters too, it's really having the vernacular or language to articulate, and ask those questions. I don't know that that's a real art. Let me rephrase that. I think it's a real art to asking questions, but I think people are always in the telling mode. Like, I have to be impressive and I have to be interesting. And I think when you can flip the script on that, it will make your conversations flawless, and interesting. And you'll probably be the highlight of that event, whether it's at school, business, wherever, just by being interested in others. I think it's a huge, huge differentiator.
You reminded me when you were talking about something I was at recently with quite a few people there's quite a few people in this group that I absolutely love, and we have collaborated on a lot of different things. And then there's a few people that come in and you can tell that they're there to, like we said, it's kind of like, come in, work the room, blah, 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 blah. I'll talk to you. I haven't met you. I'm going to talk to you, and I understand the mentality of I want to go and meet as many people as possible. I get that. And I know that when I was in sales, that was pushed so often. But again, it's not work the room. How many cards can I get? And this just happened probably a month ago. And the gentleman came up and started, talking to me and said, "Oh, have you been in this group for a while?" Yes. And I said, "So, how long have you been in the group and what is it? How did you get to know?" I never say, "What do you do?" Because I've learned a long time ago not to ask that one question. Right. It's like, how did you know X, Y, and Z? And how did you get to know the group, et cetera? And he immediately went into the business, what he does, how long he's been in business. I mean, I never asked how long he'd been, but I'm like, I knew all about the business, how long they've been in business, how much they made, blah, blah, blah. I was like,
oh,
okay.
Lord.
And then it was like, okay, it was great talking, and he walked away. And I'm like, I didn't even talk to you, but okay, And I, in that moment, it's, that happens, right? But in that moment, I thought, note to self, just make sure that, again, you shut the mouth, open the ears, and just pay attention to what people are saying. But also, I think a big part of that, again, I'll go back to, I think a lot of that is insecurities with people. And so I've come to approach some things like, okay, maybe they're just a little insecure, or they're not comfortable speaking with a lot of people, which is what you said early on. When we hide behind the phone, right? When we hide the social media, and so many people, I work with a lot of women that are like, I have to get my business out there. I have to be more visible, but it's so easy to hide behind things.
Right.
And I think it's become a crutch where we're used to it now, that it's harder to interact or to know how to show up as yourself and just be, this is who I am, not with letting everything out there. Nobody cares about all of your stuff, but being at least curious and just trying to pay attention more to what people are saying, and maybe what they're not even saying verbally, but what their body language is telling you.
Right. Absolutely. That's so true. I find that with the conversation starters. You'll hear me say that often, but I just think having the right conversation starters, it doesn't even have to be a question. It can be a comment, knowing how to elicit people's feedback and ask questions. And I just feel like it's okay to ask for help. I think for a while that was seen as like, well, that's kind of offensive, or, you're minimizing something. And I find that I was working on my EPS about 2 years ago, and it was just like, I was working with a coach, and, I empower and I do this and I do that. And I was saying, like, empower is like a result of, they'll feel empowered after I do what I do. But ultimately, I just wanted to figure out how I could help people. And in that, I didn't have to be this, epitome of amazement. I could, who doesn't want help? Like, it's just so simple. I just wanted to uncomplicate what I think people make complicated. Just like you had your conversation with that gentleman. I mean, how easy to have flipped the script on that conversation.
Yeah.
If he'd have just said, so what is it you're into these days, or what are you working on, or what projects do you have in the hopper? And you might have said something that would have given him something to say, I know, I could help,
Yeah. Or how did you come to know this group? Anything. You're right. Something like that. But again, I think sometimes when people, there's two things that have come up for me when I run into people like that. And listen, I've been guilty of this too. I mean, early on in networking things, it was like, oh, I'd go in and talk about, okay, this is what I do, who I am. It's kind of like that elevator pitch, because that's what you're like, oh, I'm supposed to do this. And here I am 21 years old in sales, right? And trying to figure it all out. But again, I think sometimes it is just, you're kind of hiding behind either you're a little unsure of what else to say, or just, a little insecure maybe, or not, socially, you just don't, that's not your thing. You're just trying to get out there and become a little bit more social. And so you're not quite sure, and it's just getting comfortable with things. So I kind of look at it like, okay, whatever, everybody kind of figures it out. But could we also go back to the word empower? And I think it's time to let that word go and get it out of our vocabulary. If I see one more thing about empower, empowering, empowered, I'm empowered, and we're going to empower people. Enough already. You're right. It's a result of something, but it's like, how many times have we hear that? I'm like, please. Anytime, like, even if I'm working on titles for episodes and sometimes you look at things and it's like, oh, empower's in there. Oh, no. I don't want that.
Right. What is your favorite action verb? I'm just curious, like when you think about all your works and all the things you've got going on, what's your favorite action verb?
Oh my gosh, just like action verb, maybe go. I'm a big Nike fan. Like, you know what? Go for it. Get up and go. That's why, listen, let's go back to why my podcast is called Shift or Get Off the Pot. I mean, the truth, it really is though. The truth is, it's kind of like, I think my action thing is truthfully, it's go for it. Like, just go for it. Life's too dang short. It's too dang short to be hiding behind the excuses, the busy work, I don't know if I can do it. I've done plenty of that myself. And it's just why? Like, who cares? And I think, certainly some of that comes with age as, you go through all the stuff you go through in life, and it is a little bit easier as you become older. I mean, I have 4 kids. When you have kids and you go through everything that you go through raising kids,
right? Birthing
kids, raising kids, and then you go, holy crap, if I can do this,
right?
I mean, what can't I do? Right?
True. It's absolutely.
And sometimes, and I also know that I think oftentimes, and I see this a lot with women, and me included, we don't give ourselves credit for what we do and what we are capable of. Because if we can't give ourselves credit for what we do and can do, we certainly can't give ourselves credit for what we are capable of. It's hard to recognize that. Like, you have to start where you are.
I love that. It's well said. Yeah, I love that. Just do it. I think we could all take a dose of that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because otherwise you overthink it, right? Otherwise, it's so easy to get into that analysis paralysis.
Right.
And to go, okay, maybe I can do it this way. I don't know if I should do that. Should I do that? I mean, I always joke with people. I'm like, listen, they've made so many things so easy online that you can go, I can create my own business cards. And then you're like, oh, what font do I want? How? There's 14,000 fonts? Oh my God. And 4 days later, you're still screwing around with it, So it's kind of like, okay, you got to know what to walk away from. You got to know what you said earlier, what your strengths are.
So true. And that's been the hardest part for me with this business and, thinking I can't do everything. You know what I mean? Like, there's a bell curve to everything, and maybe I could do everything, but is it the right use of my time? That's been the biggest thing that I've, really been picking up is, well, you could do that, but it would take 14 days, so let's expedite that and hire those who have that skill and strength that you don't. I think that was a big probably in my 30s and 40s where I really learned to leverage people's strengths and not have to know everything and be a know-it-all, and just and my collaboration with people is so much more heightened because of that, to leverage strengths and identify people's strengths and then share those with others.
That's a sign of good leadership. I mean, it really is. And if you have a business or, as you're doing, you've got a book and you're trying to get things out there and help people with that, you have to understand really where your strengths are and be willing. I think a big part of it is be willing to allow other people to take on the things that they're probably better at.
Right.
But let's face it, right? And we are.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
I agree with you, though. It took me a long time, too. And I think a lot of times it's because we think it's going to cost us something. Okay, financially, yes. But also, if I have to train them, then it's going to take more time. And it's kind of like, well, wait, if you train them one time, it doesn't take that much time.
Right.
And if you figure it out and you kind of keep a working document of how you do it, it's a little bit easier to do that. But I think that's a lesson that is difficult for a lot of people to learn. It really is. I mean, I had a hard time because like sometimes you go, oh, I don't know can they do it as well as I can? Because, we kind of get caught in that. And that's an ego thing. Yep. It's like, oh, honey, they can do it better than you can do it.
Yes, they can. That's what I really enjoyed about working with the young millennials and the Gen Z. I enjoy working with everyone, but just, the enthusiasm, the talent, what they've been able to do. It's so funny in my house. I used to be the technology guru, software guru, all those things. And it's now changed over to my husband and my daughter. And I'm as happy as a lark, that I don't have to know how to do everything. And we kind of practice that whole net offering around here for certain. It's like, how can I help you? Please help me.
I love that. I really do, because it's an important concept. It's being willing to not only ask for help first, but be okay with receiving that help.
Right. That's such a great point about the receiving of help. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's easy to just walk away from that and just say, oh, no, I've got it. I got it. And especially I think for a lot of women,
right.
The whole women's movement was, well, I can do everything or I can do anything, but it's that we just mistakenly thought, okay, I can do anything, so I can do everything. And you just can't, and no one can. And so what I've learned is the sooner that you can start to ask for that help or hand things off to others, it really does give you more time in your day to get other things done that you want to get done. Otherwise, you could be spinning your wheels. Let's face it.
Absolutely. I agree.
And there goes the focus. Then there's no focus on because then it's easy to go, okay, I'm doing this, I'm going to do this, I'm doing this. And then you can't get ahead in anything when there's no focus. It's just saying, okay, I'm going to focus on one thing and then just move forward with that.
Well, I'm curious. So mindset shift, I would love to hear a little bit about that if you don't mind, telling me about that.
About making a mindset shift or my mindset shifts or what?
Well, both. Isn't that kind of a focus for you with your offering?
Well, the thing is because I started years ago in sales, and then when I got really good at sales, my clients actually started, I had 2 clients that started asking me to come train their sales teams. And so big part of it was I had to understand how to do that without talking about, well, I visualize and I do this and I, and I start, because in those days, this was years ago, people were like, what am I going to say? I drive up in my car and I sit in my car and I visualize the entire appointment and how it's going to go. I didn't quite know how to articulate that.
Right. That makes
sense.
So
that led me into personal development. So I could really understand, okay, how are these people that are leaders ahead of me, like W. Clement Stone, like Napoleon Hill, like Norman Vincent Peale, how are all of these Ogmandino, how are these great leaders, how Jack Canfield, how did they speak about this and success? And so I kind of started blending it together then started really trying to help people understand that, number one, there's goals that you set the goals. But as I alluded to before, I had this quota and I was so focused on that, but I was letting the other things go. And so it's really being able to understand, okay, I've got to blend this and I've got to blend what I truly would like to achieve with how I'm best able to serve others in order to do that as well. And part of that is, well, I think it really is all of it. It's being able to shift into the way of being, what I would call really shift into a more elevated way of being, meaning somebody that has already achieved that result, right? Because when you put yourself in a position of having already achieved what it is that you truly want to achieve, then you look backwards. You can say, okay, what did I do to get here and how did I get here? And you come from a different perspective because you're not chasing now the goal.
Right.
It's that shift, right? And again, it goes back to it's a shift. It's a shift in energy. It's a shift in the way that you approach it. And it's a shift in the behavior because your behavior is dictated by your habits. Well, if your habits are not, I'm chasing, I've got to do this, this, and this, and you're coming from a position of, what would it be like if I've already achieved it? How does that person show up? Then that energy is diffused and you're coming from a more relaxed state, more authentic state, and you're coming from a place of service, rather place of giving, rather than a place of taking.
I love that.
That's where I think the shift comes from.
That's so, I just love that, the way you worded it. I think it's very enlightening and it falls right into, I guess it is kind of that servant leadership in a way, and we all lead. I think sometimes it's fascinating. I was doing kind of a 2-circle thing, where it was like one circle's management and leading, and I'm like, that's a whole another conversation, but I just realized that, it's like Swiss cheese, there's things that are left out of people, and that's kind of putting back into so that they're, whole is what I guess I would say. It's your way to get there seems like the most direct.
It's a whole person approach and a whole method really approach because let's face it, we know that everything is created twice, first in the mental realm, then in the physical realm. But if you don't have it in mind first, it makes it a lot harder to achieve what you want because that's where the hustle mentality comes in because now you're chasing. And it isn't a whole approach. It's like I'm chasing and chasing and chasing and everything's outside of yourself when nothing is outside of yourself. Everything is inside of yourself. And so it's just being able to go, oh, okay, if I can approach it from that perspective and truly understand why it's important and how it is going to be of benefit, not only obviously to others, but to me as well, because it has to be important to you. Then it does change things. I really do believe, though, that you have to understand, not have to, but it helps to understand that you have the ability to achieve what you want. It's inside of you already. And if you have the ability to achieve what you want and it's inside of you already, then okay, then what's the best way to approach this? Well, the best way to approach this is being willing to show up, to share, and to give.
Absolutely. I love that.
Give. It's that give and take mentality, which is what your net offering, is though. It's what your net offering is all about that helps you in turn build your net worth. That's what it really comes down to. It does. Because that networking, we always hear that saying that they're directly linked. But when you start to pull it apart, you realize that, wow, that really is true because you can't just do it alone. You can't do anything in life alone. Obviously. I mean, if you have a product, you have to sell it in order to make money. Somebody has to buy the product. Right? Nothing is done solo.
That's absolutely true. And you just kind of triggered me in a good way. It makes me think of that phrase, nobody cares what you know until they know you care.
Yes. Good point. I love that point. Well, Renee, thank you so much. I think this has been a great conversation. Getting into some of the nitty gritty, the nuts and bolts, the energy and the mindset, as I love talking about always.
Yeah, I love that.
And helping people understand just how best to show up. And being truly interested rather than being just interesting.
I love that.
Thank you for being here. We will link everything down below in the show notes and so that people can connect with you and they can find out more about net offering.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, Renee.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks so much for joining me here today. If you want some help achieving your goals, you can grab the Success Bundle link down below or head over to my website, kimkellythompson.com, where I have several free resources to help you. If you like what you've heard today, please consider hitting that subscribe button and join me throughout the week for episodes that will help you make your dreams your reality. I'll be back again soon with another edition of Shift or Get Off the Pot.